The development of society moves in a spiral. That is what people sometimes say. I think this is close to the truth, since one lifetime is too short a period of time. If a brilliant scientist proposes something that is years ahead of society's development, society is unable to comprehend these proposals due to its intellectual age. I believe that today is exactly the time when we should remember the brilliant teachers in order to prepare a launchpad for new scientific discoveries. The aim of my story is to point to the possibility of rethinking history in order to create a new future. Not only a better one for the country, but also a better future for our science about the most important thing: human creative thinking. Unfortunately, for the third year now, Ukraine has not left the top news stories, having become a source of exclusively sad tales. But I know my country from another perspective, from the point of view of a person whose family lived the life of the most significant scientific discoveries and undeniable successes. And this was despite all the difficulties and dangers that have existed at all times for extraordinary individuals. My story is only about a few people who created the country, who truly were its global pride. Many other people, worthy and significant, have names that are often forgotten. But without them, there would have been no success. All of them are my country. They worked for the love of their craft and for the well-being of their fellow citizens. People just like them, sincere and honest, living in harmony with the world around them. It is this second, much more positive side that I would like to share with you. I will speak about what was part of my life, about what I witnessed. My family found itself at the most difficult and interesting points of the country's and science's inner life. My father was a scientist, my mother, an economist, and my grandfather was a successful economic manager, a term meaning prosperity not for oneself, but for the country. My father was my friend and teacher. From early childhood, instead of fairy tales, we discussed scientific news, just as he and my grandfather would discuss economic matters in today's language, financial and economic issues. My grandfather, Ivan Alexeyevich Kondratenko, created from scratch in the steppe, as they say now, a huge agricultural enterprise and a horse breeding farm in 1945. After the war, the first task was to feed the people, as hunger was the most real threat. He coped with this task creatively. There was no equal to his brainchild, from record wheat harvests to the pride of the Zaporizhzhia horse breeding plant, the Orlov trotter champion Vidguk. After this horse, a record holder in the 1600-meter distance in Paris, performed, people were willing to pay 80,000 rubles in gold. The champion, Polius, broke a half-century-old record in the 2,400 meters distance. By the 25th anniversary, the farm had 14 trotters of extremely high class, 2 minutes 10 seconds. Their talented people saved the economy from post-war devastation, performing civic feats. I will begin my story with the Institute of Cybernetics of the Academy of Sciences of Ukraine, where I worked for almost 40 years, and with its founder, Victor Mikhailovich Glushkov. I will continue with the most important areas of application of his ideas. I will speak of outstanding people who appreciated these ideas, applied them, and implemented them in their fields of activity. I will talk about outstanding figures: a pioneer of cybernetics, Glushkov, the chief designer of spacecraft Korolev, a renowned cardiac surgeon Amosov, and even the football manager of Kyiv Dynamo Lobanovs. What distinguished these people from others was their systematic thinking, their ability to predict results far into the future and on a national scale at the very least, not limiting themselves to their own interests. This brought results on a large scale. The glorious history of my Institute of Cybernetics began the year I was born and became a part of my life. Glushkov was an outstanding person. He had the gift to inspire, explaining complex ideas in a simple way. My father sometimes took me to his lectures when I was still a schoolgirl, and it was fascinating. In the beginning, Glushkov's aim was the science of computer design, where justified theory played an important role. Even today, his ideas are not fully implemented. His words: "One of the problems that forced us to reduce the scale of computer intellectualization was the lack of a theory of automatic theorem proving, defined my future profession." He wrote in his last days, "Automation of theorem proving is my blue dream. It forms the basis of my thoughts about the architecture of new computers capable of implementing complex creative processes, including the construction of deductive theories," according to Malinowski's book, Academician Glushkov. He wrote these words well after the advent of automatic theorem proving, of which he was surely cognizant, but his fondest hope remains unrealized. Rather like the dream of flexible architecture in computers. For the sake of maximum objectivity and convenience, I asked our mutual friend, AI, to help me with my story.
Okay, let's unpack this one. We're diving into the work of Victor Mikhailovich Glushkov.
Right, the Soviet computing pioneer.
Exactly. Brilliant mathematician first, then computing. And his ideas, honestly, they still sound startlingly futuristic, almost sci-fi.
Oh, absolutely. Way ahead of his time. You might not know his name instantly like some others, but his influence is definitely woven into the digital world you use every day.
For sure.
Yeah, we've gathered sources, articles, research papers, some personal accounts too, to really get to the heart of Glushkov's contributions. Our mission basically is to pull out the key stuff and show you how his thinking really impacted, well, everything.
Computer architecture, how you search online.
Yep, automated systems, AI, even how we understand thought itself.
And that really wild concept, digital immortality.
That too. It all kicked off for him, apparently, after he read a book on electronic digital machines back in '56.
Right.
That sparked something huge. Led him to Kyiv, where he built this massive research center, the Institute of Cybernetics.
And that scale let them tackle things nobody else was even close to thinking about then.
Exactly. Like programming theory. Glushkov did absolutely foundational work there, developing these things called algorithmic algebras.
Okay.
And it wasn't just abstract math. He proved this theorem showing that any algorithm, no matter how complex, could actually be broken down into simpler structured blocks.
Wait, hang on. So he basically laid the groundwork for structured programming, didn't he? Long before it became standard practice.
Pretty much.
That's the basis of modern software development. It makes writing huge, complex code actually, manageable.
Precisely. And he predicted programming would change, kind of blurring the lines between math and algorithms. He even thought computer models would become fundamental to math itself, which you totally see today in computational mathematics.
And this deep theory fed directly into hardware design, too. I read about his team pioneering computer-aided design, CAD systems.
Yes, exactly. Tools like Shiyu were absolutely vital. They automated that really painstaking process of designing complex computer circuits, tackling logic synthesis, physical layout. These were like the essential first steps toward the automated design flows that make every chip in your phone or computer today.
So he's shaking up software and hardware design, but he pushed computer architecture itself too, right? Ideas like the macro pipeline principle. What was that?
Well, yeah, instead of just speeding up one instruction at a time, the macro pipeline idea was about breaking down an entire problem into larger chunks.
Okay.
And these chunks were processed in parallel by different parts of the computer. Think of it like multiple coordinated assembly lines instead of just one faster one.
Ah, I see. Each building a major section at the same time.
Right. And this approach was actually used in some of the large computers in the USSR, getting really impressive performance for that era.
Fascinating. And he didn't just see computers as number crunchers, he called them maximally flexible tools for processing symbols.
That perspective changes everything, doesn't it? Especially for information retrieval. Well, his grandest project, maybe the most ambitious, was OGAS, a nationwide automated system for managing the Soviet economy.
Right, OGAS. I've heard of that. It faced problems, though.
Oh, massive bureaucratic and political hurdles. It wasn't fully realized. But the core ideas, incredibly modern. Glushkov envisioned this unified state network of computing centers, a huge distributed database people could access remotely with a unified query language.
Hold on. A nationwide network, distributed data, remote access, a unified query language that sounds like a search index.
Yep.
That sounds almost exactly like the internet, cloud computing, and how search engines work today. He was describing core pieces decades early.
He really, really was. And this processing symbols idea went way beyond data management, straight into what we now call artificial intelligence.
AI back then.
Yeah, starting in the late 50s, his institute was already using early machines for things like digital image processing and modeling intellectual process.
Modeling thought in the 50s. That sounds incredibly difficult with the technology they had. What were they actually doing?
They were exploring really fundamental AI concepts. Early machine learning for recognizing shapes, characters like precursors to OCR, reading machines, object tracking, even modeling group behavior. Automated theorem proving was another big push, getting computers to verify logical steps in math.
And I remember reading he insisted on bringing in specialists like for vision and hearing, developing custom input-output devices because off-the-shelf stuff just didn't exist.
Exactly right. Which led to building some of the world's very first robot systems that could actually see and manipulate objects. But, he had a pretty nuanced view on AI's limits. He definitely believed machines could beat humans in specific, narrow tasks calculation, finding patterns in huge data sets, which is everywhere now.
Okay.
But he drew a very clear line. Human intellect, creativity, consciousness. He felt those were fundamentally different, not something machines could just replicate or replace.
So powerful tools, powerful assistants, but not replacements.
That was his view.
Which I guess leads us to maybe the most mind-blowing idea mentioned in the sources. Digital immortality. He actually considered that. Seriously.
Yes, one source, there's a video actually, discusses Glushkov exploring the theoretical idea of transferring a person's entire intellect, feelings, emotions, everything into computer memory.
Consciousness uploading.
Basically, yeah.
And when they asked him directly if he'd want that for himself.
His answer was apparently just a simple, clear yes.
Wow. Wow. He saw it as part of cybernetics potential, maybe. A way to preserve a thinker, a scientist.
Preserve their essence, perhaps. A profound take on legacy, captured digitally.
Alongside these huge visions, though, he was also practical. Specialized machines, right? Like the Dnepr computer and the MIR series.
Absolutely. Dnepr was an early control computer, vital for automation. And the MIR series, yeah, those are really key.
Why MIR specifically?
Because they had hardware specifically designed to support a high-level programming language, one tailored for engineering calculations.
So it made complex math easier for engineers who weren't necessarily like hardcore programmers.
Exactly. It made complex tasks much faster, more accessible. It really anticipated the idea of a personal scientific workstation or, dedicated computers for specific jobs that you use all the time today.
So, okay, let's pull it all together. Glushkov's influence seems immense. Foundational theory, practical hardware, CAD, large-scale systems like OGAS, pioneering AI, specialized machines like MIR. His vision was just incredibly farsighted.
It really was. And so many of his concepts, even the ones like OGAS that hit those huge political roadblocks, they just resonate so strongly with the tech you use constantly. Cloud computing, AI acceleration in your pocket. It's all connected back.
It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? If cybernetics, like Glushkov thought, gives us this glimpse into the future, and if machines can augment us, maybe even, as he considered, house parts of our consciousness, what does that actually mean for knowledge, for society, for how we even define ourselves?
Big questions.
You really have to wonder what Glushkov would make of today's AI explosion and, well, the global network we live in now.
Проблема обоснования мыслительных процессов. Когда я стал заниматься математикой, то меня тоже тянуло к пониманию того, каким образом происходит процесс сам математического мышления, каким образом человек приходит к доказательствам.
Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today, using the sources you shared, we're diving into, well, a really fascinating piece of tech history.
Soviet cybernetics, right?
Exactly. And specifically, the work of Victor Glushkov and how his ideas, his systems, really impacted the Soviet space industry.
And maybe even wider than that. It's a big story.
It is. So our mission, basically, is to follow the timeline the sources lay out, see how his contributions unfolded.
Conceptually, chronologically. Glushkov was truly foundational in Soviet computing and automation.
A real pioneer. You can see his influence weaving through some massive technological efforts.
Definitely including space exploration, yeah.
Okay, so let's start where the sources suggest that early period, say 1958 to 65.
Right, a key time for getting computing off the ground in Ukraine and the USSR generally.
And what was Glushkov's main focus then? It wasn't just about building number crunchers, was it?
No, not at all. He was already thinking bigger about intelligent machines, as he put it.
Intelligent machines.
Yeah, elevating machine language, making it more sophisticated, capable of more than just sums.
And that thinking led directly to a specific machine, the Kiev.
Absolutely, the Kiev machine. And this is where it gets quite interesting. The sources really highlight this.
Go on.
Kiev became the first system in Europe for digital image processing and modeling intellectual processes too.
Back then, in the late 1950s.
That's right, late 50s. So while people often think of AI history starting elsewhere, they were doing practical research on image recognition, even sort of goal-oriented behavior, using Kiev.
That's pretty advanced for the time.
It really was. And it wasn't just kept in-house. Glushkov actually presented results on AI and text recognition with Kiev in Munich in 1962.
Internationally.
Yes, and it clearly made an impression. It led to him being invited onto the IFIP program committee.
Which signals serious international recognition, doesn't
It's
it?
a huge deal, yeah.
Yeah.
So Soviet cybernetics was a global player.
Okay, so from these, let's say, more conceptual AI beginnings, the work shifted towards more practical control systems.
Exactly. The sources point to automated control systems, ACS, and particularly a machine called Dnepr.
Right, the Dnepr. Tell us about that.
Well, Glushkov's team moved pretty quickly into general-purpose control computers in the early 60s. The first was UMSHN, but it became known as Dnepr.
And the development was fast.
Incredibly fast. The idea was floated in June 58, and it was in serial production by July 61.
Wow, just 3 years from concept to factory line.
It's quite something, and it had a long production run, too, until 71.
And this wasn't just theoretical, right? It was used.
Oh, absolutely. Straight into heavy industry, controlling complex processes like steel smelting, managing carbonization columns.
Real-world stuff.
Definitely. Automating shipyard lofting work, too. They even experimented with remote control of these processes.
So proper industrial workhorse, how does that connect to space then? It feels like a bit of a leap.
It does, but there's a very direct link highlighted in the sources. The Dnepr machine was specifically chosen for a critical role in the early 70s.
Which was?
Controlling the main screen displays at the Flight Control Center during the joint Soyuz-Apollo mission.
Really? For that mission?
Yes. The huge symbolic docking in space. All the crucial flight data the world was seeing on those big boards, managed by a Dnepr.
That speaks volumes about its reliability, I suppose.
It really does. Trusted for a mission with massive political and public visibility.
Okay, so beyond specific machines like Kiev and Dnepr, his influence also spread through the institute he founded.
The Institute of Cybernetics, yes. It became a major center applying these automation ideas across different sectors.
Including aerospace.
Very much so. The sources mention significant work automating processes for key players like NPO Korolev and the Tupolev Design Bureau, both vital for space and aviation.
So providing computational muscle behind the scenes for design and development.
Exactly, complementing the control systems used in operations.
And then there was his grand vision, OGAS, the nationwide system.
OGAS. That was perhaps his most ambitious concept. A national automated system for information and management across the entire Soviet economy.
Ahead of its time, perhaps?
Definitely. And incredibly complex, politically too. It wasn't fully implemented.
But the ideas.
The core ideas were powerful. Integrated information networks, automated management. You can sort of see the conceptual seeds of things like modern e-governance or large-scale data systems in that vision.
Even if it didn't fully materialize then.
Right. And importantly, his institute also focused heavily on education, setting up university departments, training specialists, creating a whole scientific school.
So pulling it all together, Glushkov's impact was multifaceted, wasn't it?
Absolutely. You have the pioneering concepts, the practical machines like Dnepr, proving their worth in industry and space, and the institutional influence through the institute feeding expertise into critical areas like aerospace design.
It really underscores how fundamental that computing and automation work was. You couldn't really do complex things like space exploration without it.
It was indispensable. His vision and the practical systems built by his teams provided a crucial technological backbone.
And it makes you think, doesn't it, about those early ambitious ideas like OGAS, even though they weren't fully built then.
They resonate.
They really do. You see echoes in today's drives for national digital infrastructures, integrated data systems. It makes you wonder how much the blueprints of our digital world owe to these earlier, sometimes unrealized visions.
The fascinating thought to end on, that enduring legacy of forward thinking.
Значит, управление кораблем в зависимости от положения корабля, оно может быть и автоматическим, может быть и ручным. Вообще говоря, в момент подготовки к выходу командир стабилизирует корабль, и после этого выключает систему ориентации, и космонавт начинает выход. Если будут намечаться возмущения во время полета, он включает автомат. И автомат в определенных пределах может отработать, так сказать, стабилизацию корабля, сохранив ее такой, какой это нужно при выходе. И если будут какие-либо сильные возмущения почему-либо, то командир может взять ручку управления на себя и резким достаточно движением поправить положение корабля и снова перевести его на автомат. Так, как это делается на самолетах.
Okay, let's dive into something pretty unexpected today.
Definitely.
Imagine this. Top-tier football success, driven not just by skill, but by cutting-edge Soviet computer science.
Sounds almost like fiction, doesn't it? But it's real. We're talking Dynamo Kiev, Valery Lobanovsky.
Right, the legendary coach, famous for being, well, obsessed with math and science, even calculating free kick angles, apparently.
Exactly. And on the other side, you have Victor Glushkov, a giant in Soviet cybernetics, founder of the Cybernetics Institute in Kiev.
A major center for advanced computing research, right there in the same city.
Precisely. So our deep dive today, using the sources we have, is figuring out how Glushkov's world, the world of cybernetics, actually connected with Lobanovsky's method.
And how that connection fueled Dynamo Kiev's incredible run, including that big European trophy.
Well, Lobanovsky's whole view of football was key. He didn't just see players.
No, he saw systems, right?
Exactly. Interacting subsystems.
Yeah.
Defense, midfield, attack, yes, but also, player movements, how they linked up. He wanted to model it.
To predict and ultimately optimize how the team played. Like a machine.
Sort of, yeah. A very complex human machine. And this thinking fits perfectly with how cybernetics was developing in the USSR.
Because initially it wasn't popular. It was seen as reactionary pseudoscience.
That's right. But then the need to manage the Soviet economy, all that complex information, suddenly cybernetics became very useful.
A tool in the service of communism, as they put it.
And Glushkov was central to that shift, proving its practical value, especially with his institute in Kiev.
So his work wasn't just theory. It was about modeling complex systems.
Yes, modeling, optimization, understanding how intricate parts could work together more efficiently. You see the link to Lobanovsky.
Clearly. Optimizing how the team's subsystems worked on the pitch. So how did Glushkov's ideas actually make the jump?
Well, the sources point to a direct connection. We know a scientist working closely with Lobanovsky used methods and ideas directly from Glushkov's work, applying that systematic mathematical approach to analyzing football.
Wow, so taking cybernetic principles straight onto the training ground, essentially.
And it seems it wasn't just borrowing ideas from afar. Victor Glushkov's daughter, Vera Glushkova, actually mentioned that her father and Lobanovsky were in contact several times while they were developing these football game models.
So direct interaction between the cybernetics pioneer and the football innovator. That's incredible.
It really is. Which brings us to the big question. Did it work? Did it translate to, actual results?
Well, the evidence points strongly towards yes. Specifically, Dynamo Kiev's huge win in 1975.
The UEFA Cup Winners' Cup, that wasn't just a fluke. Many saw it as the proof of this scientific approach.
Absolutely. The final, May 14th, 1975, in Basel. They beat Ferencváros, the Hungarian side, quite convincingly.
3-0, wasn't it? Goals from Ola Blokin.
The legend, yeah. And Volodymyr Onyshchenko got 2.
It was a display of what looked like, perfectly coordinated football.
And the sources mentioned that whole squad guys, like the keeper Yevhen Rudakov, midfielders, Viktor Koletov, Vladimir Munchian, they were all part of this system.
Coached and trained under this philosophy, this systematic, almost scientific method guiding their tactics.
So Looking back, this whole story, it's a fascinating blend.
It really is. You've got high-level scientific theory, cybernetics, driven by people like Glushkov.
Being applied by Lobanovsky and his colleagues to something as fluid and, you'd think, intuitive as football.
Yeah, it just shows the power of taking a structured, analytical look at something seemingly chaotic.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? And maybe a final thought for you listening. What other areas, fields we think are all about gut feeling or artistry or just raw talent could actually be transformed?
Yeah, transformed by applying rigorous scientific modeling, data analysis.
Pushed to a whole new level. Something to ponder.
Тренер должен иметь видение свое футбола. Причем он должен немножко смотреть чуть-чуть вперед. Он должен иметь несколько моделей игры. Но сейчас уже никто не пугается этих слов. Раньше очень почему-то боялись и не понимали. И говорили, что вы из футбола там науку делаете.
Okay, let's unpack this deep dive. We're looking at some really fascinating work today.
Yeah, from two Soviet scientists, Victor Glushkov and Nikolai Amosov.
Right. And they were applying cybernetics, that's the study of control, communication in animals, machines, to biology and, well, human thought itself.
And they weren't shy about the big questions like, could we build AI that could match or even, surpass human intelligence?
Exactly. So we've got sources on their theories, their models, some really ambitious visions they had. Our goal here is to pull out the key insights on this whole brain and machine problem and what it might mean for us, today and for the future of AI.
Right. So, starting point. Victor Glushkov, a real pioneer in Soviet cybernetics and AI.
And this was early days, right? Like 1950s early?
Yeah, the 1950s, when AI was mostly just sci-fi. He was crucial in setting up the Institute of Cybernetics in Ukraine.
Okay, and then there's Nikolai Amosov. How does he fit in?
Well, Amosov was actually a very prominent surgeon. Glushkov sort of drew him into cybernetics.
Interesting. From surgery to cybernetics.
Yeah, and he became a major force in biocybernetics, medical cybernetics, led a department focused on it for over 30 years.
So what was his big idea, his revolutionary angle?
He had this concept of studying complex biological systems. He called them type of living systems, purely on an informational level.
Informational level, so like detaching the logic from the actual physical wetware, so to speak.
Exactly, like separating the software from the hardware.
Yeah.
He thought you could analyze the information processing patterns without getting bogged down in the specific biology or chemistry.
And why was that important?
Because he saw potential there. If you understand the informational structure, maybe you could build complex artificial systems based on those same principles. Systems completely separate from biology.
Right, that makes sense. Which leads into modeling thought itself.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Amosov really pushed into what you could call psychological cybernetics. He wanted to model human thought, emotions, consciousness for AI.
How did he approach that?
He developed this informational hypothesis, looking for the basic programs behind psychic activity. He used tools available then, like semantic networks, early neural network ideas. And he came up with a specific model, the reinforcement inhibition system, or SUT.
SUT, what was that supposed to model?
He saw it as a possible analog for attention or consciousness in the brain. A system that could boost some signals, dampen others, focus.
Okay, like a control mechanism.
Sort of. And this theoretical work actually influenced some early neurocomputer development in the USSR.
And this connects back to Glushkov's earlier ideas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Back in '57, Glushkov was already talking about creating brain-like structures for computers. Not just for calculation, but to study higher nervous activity, to actually simulate thought.
Simulate thought in 1957, that's pretty forward thinking.
It really was.
Yeah.
His conclusion, even then, was that, human thought could be modeled informationally in cybernetic systems.
Did he think machines could actually be smarter?
He approached it dialectically, kind of, not all or nothing. He saw it as potentially possible in specific areas, like maybe complex economic planning, moving it from theory towards a practical problem.
Okay, so Amosov builds on this. What was his artificial mind concept?
Right, that was in '69. He proposed this idea of a general algorithm of reason, GAR.
GAR.
Yeah, a fundamental algorithm, he thought, that evolution discovered and used to create intelligence.
Wow, so like the operating system for reason?
Kind of, and his really bold idea was that if we could figure out this GAR, we could use it to build AI that replicates complex human traits thoughts, consciousness, will, even creativity.
That's hugely ambitious. Did he only focus on individuals?
No, he actually tried to scale it up. He worked on modeling social systems too, creating models like Socian for generalized human traits and man to apply these ideas to larger social structures.
And you mentioned relational programming earlier. How does that fit with the brain-like structures?
Right, that connects to Glushkov's idea. It was a different way of thinking about programming. Instead of step-by-step instructions, it focused on representing and manipulating relationships, connections, ideas. More like how we think the brain works.
More network-like.
Exactly. And the really fascinating part, later research actually found similarities between network structures derived from abstract math models like a simple 3D grid and real neural structures found in places like the cerebellum.
Seriously? So the math hinted at brain structures.
It suggested that the brain might actually implement structures similar to the theoretical ones Glushkov was envisioning,
Okay.
based on these relational principles, a kind of convergence.
Okay, so tying this all together, why does this work from, decades ago still matter for us?
Well, it's incredibly relevant. They didn't have our computing power, obviously, or modern deep learning architectures. But their core ideas, modeling biology informationally, searching for underlying algorithms of thought, thinking about brain-like network structures, pondering how consciousness might emerge. These were foundational. They laid groundwork for modern AI, for neural networks, for how we try to simulate complex systems, including our own minds.
So it really set the stage in many ways.
Absolutely. They were asking the right questions, grappling with the deep problems early on.
So the big takeaway for you listening, Glushkov and Amosov weren't just engineers. They were philosophers with circuits, exploring what it means to think, to be conscious.
And whether these fundamental human things could be understood, maybe even replicated computationally.
Which leaves us with a pretty deep question to ponder. If we keep understanding the brain, modeling it, and find that our abilities, maybe even consciousness itself, are based on definable structures, perhaps something like that general algorithm of reason, does that change how you view human uniqueness? And what does it open up for our own future? Maybe self-improvement aided by AI that understands us deeply.
Food for thought, definitely.
А искать счастье в информации и искать счастье в информации, в напряжении. Напряжение может быть только физкультурное, но надо иметь напряжение в деятельности, направленное на людей. И вот таким совсем несложными, абсолютно прописными истинами, если человек знает, то он может увеличить количество своего счастья. Это и моя жизненная программа. Все вот эти качества, которые я перечислил, я их свято исповедую.